Mr. Bob Hinks, it feels like we were just here not too long ago. It looks cold down in Florida. Give me a rundown.
I'm telling you, we are down in Tampa, Florida area, and I woke up this morning and I was so cold. I've actually been warmer at 26 degrees in Fairbanks, Alaska. So, yeah, it was about 48 this morning when I woke up. So laugh at me as you will.
I thought, just for perspective here, it's 42 in Omaha today.
It's a cold down. It's a cold, wet, cold down here, Rich.
I went to lunch like this, so I don't know. I think you've been in Florida too long, brother.
I think so. My blood's thinning.
All right, so today we are talking to Brian Hetrick, Brian and Erica, right?
Yes, correct.
Tell me about them, how you met them, and where they are now.
I think it was roughly maybe 3 years ago. They came across a post or something. We were talking about RVing, and they were interested in doing that. And they had 2 young children, and Erica's sister was actually going to go with them and work as kind of their nanny, kind of help them out as they were on the road. They never got around to the RV, but we've been talking off and on for roughly about 1.5 years or so, and then eventually we're able to find a job and got them on contract. But Brian's a really sharp guy. We share a lot of interest, kind of old soul type people, if you will. You know, the whole swing band and, some of the whiskeys that we've enjoyed. We've gone back and forth.
It sounds like the two of you could be brothers in a different life potentially then.
I think so. Yes, I do.
That explains why the relationship works then.
That is true. And they're pretty much like family. You know, we spent some time with them down here in St. Pete this winter when they came down, spent some of their home base time down here, and got together at a few outings, and it was great.
Fantastic. All right. Well, I'm going to talk to them now. Bob, thank you so much. I absolutely appreciate every nurse that you bring to us. And this one, I guarantee this one's going to be a lot of fun.
Very much. Thank you.
All right, Bob. Thank you. And Brian and Erica, welcome to the Atlas Life. Okay, Brian Hetrick is with us today. Brian, you are with Mr. Bob Hinks, who I just talked to a minute ago and kind of filled me in on where you're at and what you're doing. Give me your side of the story. How'd you meet Bob? Where are you at now? What's going on?
So I met Bob initially. I think my initial contact with Bob was via telephone, and that would have been about 2 years ago. So when my wife and we've been traveling now for about 2 years. When we first decided that this was an endeavor that we were going to pursue, kind of fell in our lap, so to speak. It started as a joke, honestly. Yeah, it really did. So in Florida, where we're from, my wife is actually a pediatric practitioner, and she's been working NICU now for 13, 14 years. And we had moved from the Tampa area to Orlando. And she took a practitioner job under the premise that some promises that were made to her were going to come true. And long story short, 2 years later, she never got any of the stuff that she was promised. And so she was starting to get a little aggravated at work. I still love the hospital, don't get me wrong, but I was having some issues with hours and some other things that were going on. And both of us were kind of like, there's got to be something else that we can do. And so she looked at locums, and one day she sent me a text message that had a locum NICU job as a practitioner. And I saw the pay rate on there, and I jokingly was like, why would we not do that? That's just ridiculous. I knew nothing about it. I had a friend that had traveled before, but it had been several years ago. And aside from what he told me, I knew absolutely nothing about it. And so I started doing what I figured a lot of other people do. I started just hitting Facebook. I was going online. I was looking for the blogs, looking for the groups, just trying to learn, just trying to figure out something. And we probably read for a good 4 or 5 months before I even bothered to call anyone. And honestly, I got Bob's name off of the Facebook groups. And I had read about Atlas and read about some of the other companies. And the idea, all I really knew about Atlas at the time is that Atlas was a smaller company. Compared to some of, the bigger names that we all know are out there.
Yep.
but everyone had great things to say about Bob that I looked at. I actually had made a long list of different companies' names and different recruiters' names that I had garnered from reading and asking questions and whatnot. And I called Bob. And the very first time I called Bob, having no idea what in the world I was doing or what I was talking about, for the most part, he spent probably a good hour and a half to 2 hours just talking to me, just answering my questions, explaining to me how things worked. And the biggest appeal that I had was that he was willing to take the time to do that for some guy that he had never talked to before. Two, that he had no idea if I would ever work with him or not. But he took all that time, and that he talked to me, like a human being. I didn't feel like I was being sold. I didn't feel like anybody was trying to push a job. He wasn't asking me, when do you want to start? None of that kind of stuff. He was just like answering questions and kind of telling me what it was all about.
Nice.
Yeah. And then I didn't get to work with Bob, though, for about a year because my wife and I both travel. I'm ER and she's NICU. And we always had a hard time being able to line them up to get them together. And so we traveled with other companies and stuff that, sometimes we had to kind of piece it together. I would be with company A and she'd go with company B, but it was a way for us to be able to travel together. And then the stars and the planets all finally aligned about a year ago, and we were able to my wife and I both went with Bob in Seattle, and we spent a year there, and I haven't looked back since.
Awesome. And quite honestly, that sounds like our Bob, right? I mean, he'll give you the shirt off his back, or when you watch this, the coat off of his back, because it's 48 degrees down in Florida today, and he's freezing. I personally think he's been in Florida too long.
He loves it, though.
I think, honestly, I think he'd be okay if he lived up here with us in Omaha or back down in Kansas, like in Wichita, I think he'd be all right. But I think he might have gotten just a little soft down there.
You think so?
Well, maybe a little bit.
Okay, we'll see. I mean, he is Captain Christmas after all, though. So
that's right. That is absolutely true. That dude loves Christmas. Any time of the year, he loves Christmas.
Right.
So, I mean, that's him. And I think that's what makes him such a great recruiter, is because he didn't know you from any other guy, right? And had just as much to do that day as any other day. Yeah. And he took that much time with you.
And not only that, but in that span of time between when I first called him and when I finally was able to work with him, I called him every contract I was looking for something.
Yeah.
And he was always on the look. He was always trying. Always trying.
Yeah.
And just the fact that he was willing to do that, to put that time in for someone who had not ever worked with him, had never taken a contract with him.
Yeah.
But it was just one of those, I think we totally jived from the first time that we spoke to each other. And every time we called him, I told him it's one of these days. And then it finally happened. So.
And it happened there in Washington State. So yeah. That's awesome. I joked with him a little bit that you two might be brothers in a different life, right? I mean, you have so many things in common. Yeah. I mean, it's beyond just maybe, I know you talked about the RV thing a little bit, but your taste in whiskey, right? I mean, that's cigars, just old soul type things.
Yeah. Yep. Our Rat Pack music, our jazz.
Yep.
When we went to TrapCon this past year, we had tickets. We went to go see the Rat Pack Back show together.
That's right. The day we left, right? The day that we left, you guys stuck around and went to that show.
Yeah.
So tell me what it's like traveling with. So your wife is perm now, right? Erica's perm.
Yeah.
And then it's totally fine. I mean, look, you're right. Things don't line up sometimes, right? I mean, that's just kind of the nature of the business.
For sure.
But so you've got a contract. Your wife's working perm. You travel with your 2 kids. Is that right?
Yeah.
So how does that all work? How do you fit that all together?
Oh, it's been adventurous. We want to talk about traveling and adventure, right? That's really what it's been all about. So we travel. There's me and my wife. I have a 3-year-old boy, a 6-year-old boy. And then my sister-in-law, so my wife's sister, travels around with us also.
Mm-hmm.
The very first contract we ever did, we actually worked opposite days, opposite shift.
Ooh.
So that somebody was always home with the kids. My kids have been lucky and fortunate enough that they've never had to be with anyone they didn't know.
Good.
So they've never gone to daycare or any of that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And we liked it that way. We wanted to keep it that way. Mm-hmm. So the first contract we did, I worked nights, she worked days, and we worked opposites. So I had 1 day off a week. We had 1 day off a week together, and that was a day after I would work the night before. So I would work that night, come home, and then I would stay up all day so that we could, that's how we planned day trips and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But since then, it's been great. It's kind of been a win-win for everybody, honestly. The sister-in-law coming, it was another one of those things where the stars kind of aligned. And when we talked so her name's Rachel. Mm-hmm. And when we talked to Rachel, we were like, well, how about you come out here to California? You know? And she was like, no brainer. So yeah, she came out, and it's been an adjustment. Housing and all that kind of stuff becomes a bit more of a thing. I don't make as much money as some other folks might necessarily, because I always need larger housing and stuff like that. So that's a challenge, sure. Especially coming out here this past time. So I'm in Roseville, California. Mm-hmm. And we came out here from Florida about 3 or 4 weeks ago. Yeah, 4 weeks ago, because I'm working on timesheet number 4. But yeah, we had a hard time figuring out what we were going to do out here. Between trying to, we need bigger space, obviously, because there's 5 of us. Mm-hmm. And trying to rent a house versus, do we do an apartment? Do we want to break a lease? What do we, you know what I mean? Like the whole thing.
Right.
We actually, in Seattle, we got really lucky. We met, it was one of those, oh, hey, I know a nurse who knows a nurse who's getting married and has a condo and she wants to rent it.
Oh, geez.
And so we were like, oh yeah, okay, let's check it out. And it ended up, we met her. She was super nice. We did like one little walk through the apartment, and she was like, yeah, cheers, no problem.
Wow.
And I stayed there for almost the whole year. We actually did an Airbnb for about 7 weeks when we first got to Washington. And then after that, the rest is history, so to speak, I guess.
So I normally ask, like, what's the hardest part of traveling? But I mean, that seems like that's probably it, right?
Yeah, I think right now, the hardest part has been traveling. I jokingly, I tell everybody I talk to, I travel with a brood. And that's been my challenge. And because I don't RV, the topic has come up more than once. We've said, oh, we're going to do it. And then we talked ourselves out, and then we've seesawed on it back and forth several times. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of argument for it. I basically said, look, I started traveling to get rid of debt. That was the reason I started doing this.
Sure.
And then RVing would initially kind of go backwards with that. And
right.
So I was like, I'd rather do what I'm doing, meet the goals that I've set for our family, and do that kind of thing, and then talk about it afterwards at that point. So that's where we are. But yeah, that would definitely, for me, that would be the hardest part. That, and the fact that just the 2 of us, because we travel together, always trying to manage to find something together. That's been tough too.
That's just a nonstop, right? I mean, you're definitely not alone there.
Oh no. Yeah. No, I know that we're not. And we're both specialty. So that part is nice, mm-hmm. But it's been one of those where, oh, there's an ER job and no NICU job. There's a NICU job and no ER job.
Yeah.
Or somebody will say that, there'll be postings, we'll go to submit to stuff, and then one of them one specialty closes, but the other one stays open. And
yep.
Yeah. So it's been a challenge, especially recently. The nature of the industry in the last year or so certainly hasn't made it any easier. That's for sure.
It has definitely shifted. That's for sure. I mean, and there's a number of reasons why, obviously, but yeah, it's definitely shifted and made it much more difficult for a couple like you that travels together with those 2 different specialties. That's especially the dramatically different specialties, right? I mean, ER and NICU. That would be tough. That'd be really tough.
My wife always says, if they can talk, I'm not interested. And I always tell her, if they can't talk, I'm not interested.
That's why you work. That's perfect.
That's it, man. Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad that you and I got to talk. I was hoping that Erica would be there, but I'll ask you, I'll wrap this up and ask you the one question I always ask everybody. And it's a little bit tougher, but I get some great answers from it. What's the one lesson through all of this, through nursing career, travel career, everything, that you think has taken you the longest to learn?
I know what my wife would tell you. My wife would tell you patience.
Yeah.
So what I have garnered probably the most is to understand, even though a lot of times when my head, or my gut even for that matter, might not agree with me, is that every time I thought it was as hard as it was going to get, or I thought that nothing was going to happen, it wasn't going to work, it's not going to, job's not going to come through, we're not going to find a place to stay, whatever, that it always works eventually.
Yeah.
But patience has always been hard for me. Even like in what I do when I work, like I work in I'm an ER, I work in an immediate gratification type place.
Right.
Yeah. And I do it because it suits me. Never been my strong point.
Yeah.
But I'm learning. We're getting there. That, and, I would also tell you, and you'll laugh at this, isn't just this is more almost like a relationship thing, but it totally applies to this travel gig that we've got going on now.
Okay.
And you're going to chuckle, but I'm going to tell you that my wife is always right.
Mine is too. Neither of us are nurses, and she is too. I hope she doesn't watch this. I would never admit it. I know I just admitted it to everybody, but she is.
Yeah. She's always right, man. And she'll tell you, like, there's been more than once when I'm at home, I'm the one fretting. I'm the one stressing. I'm the one like, what are we going to do? Da, 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 da. And she's always like, it always works.
It works.
It's going to happen.
Yeah.
It's going to happen.
And, it doesn't surprise me, quite honestly. I've talked to so many ER nurses over the years, right? And you guys are all wired the exact same way. I mean, there's a reason why you're an ER nurse. You just have that. And I'm not surprised, man.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you run into quite a few like that in the ER, coworkers and stuff that are just like that. Because quite honestly, if you weren't, you'd probably be an ICU nurse. I mean, right?
And I tried that. I did that. I did it for a while. I did it for 2 years, and it was just one of those things that it didn't fit.
Yep. Not if there's anything wrong with ICU nurses.
No, not a dig at all. It's just we all have a niche where we fit, and I didn't fit there.
Yep. Yeah. So. After this many years and talking to this many, man, I mean, it's just I'm not surprised by your answer at all. Like that, not one bit. Awesome. Well, Brian, thank you so much for being with us today. I really do appreciate it. I know we tried to schedule this a couple 2 or 3 times. So
it's all good, man. I look forward to it.
Thank you so much for everything that you do. Thank you for doing the interview today, and then putting up with Bob down there in Florida and his softness over the years.
Oh, well, I've tolerated him, I guess.
There you go. All right, Brian, thanks so much, and we'll see you on the road.
All right, thanks.